Hey there. Welcome to Coach Barnabas. Tell you what, this episode, I'm really excited. We just got back, as you may know, from a trip to Europe that included several days in Italy. Among them was some time in Florence, Italy, where we got to spend some time with Michelangelo's sculpture, David. And I want to share with you some life lessons that I took from spending a little bit of quality time with that sculpture. Just some things I took away from that. So that's coming up right here in this episode of Coach Barnabas.
Welcome to the Coach Barnabas podcast. It's time to take a few minutes and leave behind the stuff that drains us and recharge our batteries with some encouragement and insight. Finding the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Hi, welcome back. Once again, I'm Corey. This is Coach Barnabas, 29th episode. Thanks so much for joining me. And I want to just get right into this. As I mentioned here in the little intro, we just got back from a couple weeks in Europe, spent a lot of time in Germany, and a lot of places bouncing around through Tuscany and Italy. Beautiful country. I love Italy. It's just amazing and breathtaking. But I want to speak about a particular experience I had when we toured the museum that houses the amazing sculpture Michelangelo's David. Just give you a little background, Michelangelo's David was carved out of a single slab, a single block of marble. From the pedestal to the tip of his head is 17 feet of marble. And so you have to figure, that original slab of marble must have been around 20 feet or so in height. I don't know the exact dimensions, but, you're carving away. So in spending the time just observing and admiring this work of art, I was blown away. First of all, I don't really have an artistic bone in my body when it comes to that kind of thing. I marvel at it. I find myself, I can watch TV shows and just I am completely enamored with people who have any kind of artistic background. I have a niece who's incredibly gifted artistically, and I'm constantly blown away by what she is able to produce. So this has been part of my thing because I can't even do stick figures, to be real honest. I'm terrible. So to be staring at a 17-foot marble statue that was carved 500 years ago, more than 500 years ago, without all the modern tools and technology that we have. It blew my mind, and I still continue to be impressed just at the thought of this thing. So being in the same room with it was really inspiring to me. And then not only just the history of it all, but if you've ever had a chance to see it, or if you've seen pictures or hope to go there someday, you'd be blown away by just the level of detail in the statue. Because for me, if it were me, it would look cartoonish. First of all, if it were me, you probably wouldn't recognize it as a human body, because again, no artistic skill. But the point is that you do something and it's like, okay, I think that resembles a human body. There's a couple of arms and some legs and an upper body and a head. Okay. And these things on the side that are supposed to be ears and eyes, nose. Okay. Basics. But if you really kind of dive into Michelangelo's life and his commitment to his art, you'd realize that he spent time where he actually dissected cadavers to learn more about their anatomy and the musculature and just everything about them. He wanted to know every detail about the human body that he could incorporate into his art. And that's real commitment, because I don't know about you, but I'm also squeamish. So the idea of cutting something open to dissect it from the inside out, probably not on my list of things to do today, or ever, for that matter. So his commitment to his craft was intense. But it made him better. And so when you think of that, and then you look at the sculpture and you see even the detail of the veins in David's forearm, or the particular way that David's hand and wrist are turned and positioned is the only position that actually leads to a particular definition of muscles in the forearm towards the elbow that are depicted in this statue. And his knowledge and understanding of the muscles and the tone and all this other stuff and the way an arm would be positioned and all this other stuff, and that he captures. It's not like he was able to take a photograph and then, there it was, and then he just copied it. It was in here. And for those of you who are not watching on YouTube and you're on an audio only format, I was pointing to my skull, just letting you in on that. So sorry for the visual for those of you who are in an audio only format. That being said, this is all based on his observations and what he learned from his dedication to learning the details of the human anatomy and incorporating into a 17-foot tall. And David himself, from toe to top of his head, is 14 feet. So the pedestal adds a few feet, but still, that's a large block of marble that's carved into this incredibly detailed and fascinating work of art. Now, the point in that I'm saying as far as a life lesson, let me get to that. Right? We've gotten a little bit of the history out of the way. Let's get into the takeaway. It has been attributed to Michelangelo, though there's no empirical evidence that he said this specifically about David, but it has been attributed to Michelangelo that he had claimed that in other sculptures, he would look at the obvious, a quarried slab of marble, or as was the case with David, and what other people would see as a giant rock. He would see whatever it was inside the rock, and then he had to carve away whatever wasn't that figure. So in other words, whether it was an angel or whatever other figure he was going to be carving, was housed inside that giant rock, that giant block of marble. And it was up to him to carve away, chip away everything that wasn't part of that image. And in that, whether or not he said that about his sculpture of David is irrelevant. The fact of the matter, that's the way he saw things, and so it's not difficult or an exaggeration to extrapolate from that's the way he saw things into that's what he saw when he was creating the David statue. So the point of that is this: that for a human being to learn the details of another human being, maybe you have to resort to undesirable things like cutting open cadavers and all that kind of stuff. If you've been through med school or any kind of training like that, then you've had to do some probably somewhat disgusting things in order to learn about the human body and so forth. Now, if you're God, you have the distinct advantage of, you created the human body, so you know it all inside and out. So there's that. And if you think of just each one of us, what makes us unique from one another is God knit us. If you go back and read Psalm 139, I encourage you to do that. If you've never done it, I really encourage you to spend some time today doing that. If you've done it before, hey, go back and revisit it because it's significant. It's great. It's wonderful. But if God knows us so detailed, knows everything about us, even from before we drew our first breath, and he already knows when we'll draw our last breath. Okay, he's not subject to time. But the point is that there's a lot of things in our lives that we allow into our lives, or that we've accumulated throughout the course of our lives, that simply are not how God envisioned us. He sees through all those things like this giant block of marble in Michelangelo's eyes, or Michelangelo, I think is more accurate from what I learned being in Italy. That's what the locals call him, is that he could see the finished product even through what other people could see. And God, very similarly, but obviously on in an infinitely larger scale, sees us the way he sees us. In the things that we have accumulated or the things that we've just allowed into our lives that don't belong there, he wants to chip those things away and get down to the essence of who we really are, because it's in there. What God has for you, what his plans for you, his desires for you, the blessings he has for you, the things that he wants to teach you, and that you'll learn from, and that you can then spread that knowledge and experience to others who can benefit from it. That's all in there. But sometimes we have to carve away the things that simply don't belong. And that can be a painful experience, because if you imagine the rather violent process of taking a chisel and a hammer and literally chipping away at all the stuff that could be hard shelled and we're encased in it, that's probably not a simple process. And even though once you start to develop that, and you're chipping away and you're finally getting to a figure of sorts, then comes the detail. And I imagine, to whatever extent, Michelangelo had to sand it down to make it smooth, and then get the detail of, like I said, veins in the arms, or the definition in muscles, or literally the furrow of the brow on David's face, and the look in his eye of determination. Because if you're not familiar, the statue of David is basically from the moment that David was looking across the battlefield at his foe, which you may know is the story of him taking down Goliath. And this is the moments before, where David has the sling, thrown across his shoulder. He's holding it in his hand, and he's got the rock in his right hand, the rock that he used to slay Goliath. So that's what this image is. That's the point in history that is depicted in this statue of David, is the moment before he took down Goliath with a rock in his sling. So the detail of that moment, and what, thinking all that through, it's like, okay, God, we're defined by God, and certain circumstances that we go into, he sees that. He knows the end from the beginning. God knew in that moment that what was going to happen moments later, in the ripple effect that would have, in perpetuity for the rest of time, the rest of human history. So he knew that Jesus would come from the line of David, that David would one day be king. I mean, he knew all this even before this moment that's supposedly captured here in this marble image of David. But all that to say, again, is that, there's a lot of things we allow in our lives that God wants to chip away. And you are a masterpiece. You are a work of art far greater than something an artist did 500 years ago, that, people, as we speak, are lining up to view. Okay, and paying money to see. But you are every bit and more valuable to God, and more an intricate, one-of-a-kind work of art in his eyes. If you'll allow the sculptor, God, if you'll allow the sculptor to chip away at the things that are keeping you from being exactly who you're supposed to be. It's in there. You are in there. What God has for you, your potential is in there. You've just got to let him do it. And you have to cooperate with that, and not acquire more stuff that attaches to you like plaque, okay, or like a fungus or whatever. We will accumulate things that just simply don't belong, and they degrade who we are and who God wants us to be. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you today. Is here's this incredible work of art we can look at, but there's so much more to it than that in God's eyes. And I just want to encourage you with that. No matter where you are, no matter where you were, where you are, it's like, hey, if you want to, become something greater, if you want God's fullest in your life, is let him chip away at the things that simply don't belong, that simply keep you from being the masterpiece you were designed to be. Let him do that. And you will be better off. You'll be so grateful. You'll be free. Just as, the way David saw it is he was freeing, he was liberating David from this capsule that had him entombed, and liberated him from that. And literally millions and millions and millions and millions of people for generations, for hundreds, for centuries, have viewed this amazing work of art. And how much greater is it that God knows every detail of your life, everything about you physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and he just wants to make you, give you the potential that He has for you. He wants to release it and liberate you from all the things that are keeping you from it. So let Him do that. So that's my encouragement to you today. Be encouraged. Be an encouragement. I look forward to talking to you again real soon. Take care.
Thank you for joining the Coach Barnabas podcast. We'd greatly appreciate your support by liking and subscribing to the podcast and setting up notifications so we can let you know when new episodes are available. We'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment. Make a difference today.